Teachers slash childcare workers, what's the worst case of helicopter parenting slash my child can do no wrong you've ever seen? I had a boy who kept acting out in class. Things like talking to classmates while I was giving directions, giving strange answers, hitting the boy sitting next to him in the arm, grabbing a boy's chicken during class. I kept notes and informed our academy director about what was happening, and he was pulled aside after school a few times to talk about his behavior. One day, at the end of class, he reached across the table and forcefully flicked a girl in the forehead. She complained, and he cocked back his arm like he was going to punch her in response. I had him sit while I let everyone else leave and told him to stay seated while I discussed his behavior with the academy director. If nothing else, being the last one to go would be a sort of punishment. The director chewed him out, and apparently he told his mom about it because his mom came to the academy to say that her son was an angel, and I should be reprimanded for exaggerating or lying about the situation. Cue the director listing off all the crap her son had done over the past few weeks and telling her that her son was no longer welcome at the academy. Never saw him again after that. So I know that this is going to be the theme, obviously, hence the question, the title topic of this video, but it's just amazing. Like, parents like this are the worst. The enablers that think their kids do no wrong. This is the reason why the future of this world is so bleak. I hate to say it, but it's true. Next story. While studying, I work in after-school care. One day, a 9-year-old was showing everyone his lighter by trying to set the shirt he was wearing on fire. I obviously took the lighter from him. When his mother came to pick him up, I handed it to her and told her about him trying to set a shirt on fire. Turns out it was her lighter, so I had no right to confiscate it, and her son just wouldn't try to set his clothes on fire because he's not an idiot. So I must be making that up. Next story. I once had a parent tell me the reason his son told the band director, "I don't have to listen to you because you suck chicken." Band director was a young gay male fresh out of college, was because he was recently diagnosed with ADHD. When I responded that I had been diagnosed with ADHD as a child and still struggled with it, but it had never once caused me to tell anyone else that they sucked chickens, he became belligerent and started threatening me. I'm pretty sure this kid is in jail now. Next story. In kindergarten, we have testing twice a year, one in the winter and again in the spring. A parent called in a conference because her daughter had received 2% under the cutoff that suggested her child may, by 3rd grade, need additional help meeting reading goals. Now, that isn't why I consider her a helicopter parent. Those test scores can be confusing, and I could see why she might have been worried upon seeing that if she didn't really understand the way it worked. However, myself and my mentor spent about 45 minutes, with her kid in the room hearing everything, trying to console her that her daughter was doing fine and that we weren't concerned about her progress at all. We told her she interacts well with her peers, feels confident and comfortable reading, and that these tests aren't a good way to showcase understanding, especially for a 5-year-old. The mother revealed that she makes her daughter do over 30 minutes of homework every night and won't even let her walk downstairs without reciting all her weekly spelling words. Other stuff too, but basically the mom was putting unreasonable pressure on this 5-year-old girl, like planning college and thinking years ahead. Just relax, your kid is 5. If we have any concerns, trust me, you would know. Don't burn your kid out this early in their education. Next story. I had a 3rd grade student whose mother felt that I favored other students over her son. She would call me and yell at me about not treating him fairly and lying. She snuck past the office a few times to come into the classroom to watch me teach, which of course is illegal, and I'd have to call the office. She'd tell me and the principal that she was trying to catch me in the act of being dishonest. Of course, my principal always defended me and dealt with the parent. As a final straw, the mother bought a watch with a voice recorder in it, and the boy wore it to school. He yelled out in the middle of class suddenly, "I'm secretly recording you, and you won't teach here for much longer." An 8-year-old. Of course, the watch was confiscated and the child was moved into a different classroom, though the school district could have legally moved him into another. But the mother still never backed down, and the next teacher had similar issues. Next story. Before uni started, we used to hold activities for first-year students, Frosh Week for Canadians reading this. Nothing educational, but always good fun. Had a student show up with his mother, and she questioned everything we were doing and how it will relate to her son's duties. It didn't. We were very clear that it was all for building relationships and a bit of pre-study enjoyment. It was also a chance to meet older students and get an idea of uni life. She was having none of it. She wanted to speak with the head of department and file an official complaint about these activities. Clearly, having fun was not part of an education. The second day, she came again and triumphantly said the dean is coming to talk to us. The dean did come, gave us a pep talk, and said how much he enjoyed this time of the year, chugged a beer, and told us to join him in the local pub later on. She was speechless and left in a huff, dragging her son by the hand. Neither showed up for the rest of the week. Next story. Music teacher here. I had a hella mom of one of my guitar students sit in on him during his first lesson. She was sitting right by him, shoulder to shoulder. As I was talking about various things like how to hold the guitar and how to shape your hands and fingers around the neck, she would grab his hand and do it for him. Every single time, for everything. Time to strum some chords? Mom did that for him too. Can't get the fret hand to squeeze hard enough to make the strings ring? She pressed his fingers for him. He cried out at that, and that's when I stopped and told her she had to let him do it on his own. All I got for that was a sharp look and a "fine then." He tried on his own, and the string just made kind of a thud noise, and she said, "See, he needs me to help him." I told her that the only way he was going to be able to do it was to try and do it on his own. He was the one who had to build up the strength. Things didn't really progress much after that, and I ended the lesson. With all of that, I wasn't thinking they'd be sticking around for a second week, but back they came. Second lesson started off the same, and I politely told her she'd have to give him space in order to try. Still, she wasn't thrilled, but relented and got up in a huff and went out into the hall to watch from there. After she left, this kid took a deep breath and was visibly more relaxed. After she stepped out, he was able to have his own space, and he actually tried on his own. He started to do better. It was awesome. At the end of the lesson, he said he couldn't wait to come back, and his mom came in and grilled him with something like, "Why can't you do that when I'm helping you? You don't want my help? You don't need my help?" I could understand stuff like this if he was a young kid, 7 or younger, but dude's 14 years old. He's going to be a freshman in the fall. This poor kid has ended up being one of my best students. His mom still hovers, and he's still super weird and socially awkward dude from living in a bubble, but he's finally found something he can be good at independently from his mom. It's really rewarding to see him gaining more and more confidence, even if it's slowly. He'll get there someday. Next story. I taught middle school for 1 year. We had a student who was being disruptive in all the classes. He was refusing to turn in work or even do it. He was constantly causing trouble. We had each tried several strategies to deal with the behavior in our own time. We had each talked to the parents numerous times, but they never did anything nor believed that the student was doing anything inappropriate. No one was having any success. Eventually, one of the teachers had enough, so he suggested we do a meeting between all of the students' teachers, the guidance counselor, a vice principal, the student, and his parents. There are 6 teachers, plus the vice principal and the guidance counselor, all saying the same basic version of, student needs to pay attention, needs to do the work, needs to stop distracting other students, needs to be respectful, etc., etc. The mother disbelieves us. It's not the student's fault. We all have it in for the student. Nothing changed. Teaching sucks. Next story. I worked at a summer camp and we told scary stories. One of the boys in the camp couldn't sleep for the whole week because of some of the stories, so his mom demanded the scary stories be banned, otherwise she would basically badmouth our programs. The next Monday, the boy complained to me that we couldn't tell scary stories anymore and was upset about it. Tell that to your effing mom. Next story. An incredibly quiet student just flat out refused to engage in any discussion in class. She was an extremely pleasant girl, she just wouldn't speak. I brought it up with her mother during an interview, and she told me she'd forbidden her daughter to express her opinion and to just listen to the teacher out of fear they wouldn't agree with her opinion and mark her down out of bias. I assured her that expressing an opinion wouldn't get a student marked down in my class and that developing one is important to her learning, but she just said, I'd rather she didn't. Next story. Less helicopter parent, more my child is innocent in a scam. My mom was kicked out of work temporarily from her underprivileged school until this case was settled. A kindergartner had just gotten her ears pierced and she took the earrings out in class because they hurt. The teacher sent her to the health secretary, my mom, and this little girl lost an earring somewhere along the way. Cleaned the ears and sent her back to class. Mother of the child sued my mom and filed a case with the school because I guess the earrings were solid gold and diamond. I guess that's what Claire's pierced with. Seems legit. Tried to accuse my mom of stealing the earring. No chance that a 6-year-old lost a tiny object. Of course, the woman did not win in this situation, and my mom got back to work, but it was a whole bunch of baloney, according to the teachers and office employees at the school, for a lost earring and an injured earlobe. Next story. I wasn't a teacher, but I did have a brief stint as a cheerleading coach. Kid gives an attitude about doing literally anything, won't follow any instruction, and usually either sasses me or sits on her phone. Additionally, kid skips practice to snort Xanax and put it in her Snapchat. Okay, I told her that if she wasn't interested in participating, she can sit in the stands Friday night instead. Kid proceeds to go to the bathroom and calls mother. It's not like I can actually take away their phones. Try dealing with parents on that. Mother drives from work 30 minutes to scream at me for almost an hour. Apparently, it's my fault. Her child is the best on the team, and I'm clearly targeting her. She says I've destroyed her confidence and am jealous of her talent. She can do whatever she wants if she's the best on the squad. Okay, lady. I stopped coaching after that year. Next story. While I was student teaching, I had a student and his mom was the art teacher. The student was a straight-up douche, would cheat on any assignment, belittle classmates, etc. Anytime the student got in trouble or called out, he would run to his mom, the art teacher, and she would fight for him. All the teachers in the schools were afraid of her since she's been in the district for a long time and was thought to do no wrong by the administration. The student ended up plagiarizing an essay in class. I gave the student a 0, as it was stated in the assignment sheet that all plagiarism would be an automatic 0, and all hell broke loose. Meetings with the principal were set up. Mom would come in during my plan period and rip my ass for failing her kid, and the student would come fake crying to class. The essay was a large portion of the grade and would mean he would fail the class. After about 2 weeks of the mom coming in, I finally told her if he turned a new essay into me by the end of the week, he could get 50% credit on it, would move his grade to a D if he got 100. The student comes waltzing into class on Friday and hands me his essay. After quickly scanning the essay, it just seemed off. After a quick Google search, the student took the entire Wikipedia page and copied it for his essay. After school, I went down to the art room to talk to the mom. I still remember the conversation like it was yesterday. Me: he did a great job on his essay. Mom: great. He was locked up in his room all week working on it. And I go: when I looked at his paper, I did notice there was an odd section, though. What do you mean? This section has a superscript number on it, and I don't see where he cited it. That's odd. I'll ask him about it. And then I pull out the printed Wikipedia page over his topic that's word for word. Here's the Wikipedia page over his topic if you want to look at. Mom, and scans over both, and her face turns ghost white. Will he be able to make this up? And I say, with a look of disbelief on my face, hell no! The student ended up getting suspended, and Mom tried to fight the suspension. She even went as far as to look into the legitimacy of the grade, since a student teacher taught the course. All in all, the mom is no longer a teacher in the district, and the kid is in jail for selling drugs. The rest of the staff loved me for standing up to her and her son. Next story. I'm a nanny on the Upper East Side of New York, and while my boss is a good non-helicopter father, I routinely have playdates with other kids. I have a 4, 8, and 13-year-old, so I've seen it all. My two favorites, though. A mother of one of my little girl's friends called my boss up furious and insisting he fire me because I let her child play with sidewalk paint. She was mad I made her 7-year-old use a paintbrush instead of doing the drawing for him after he told me what he wants. He could have poked his eye out with a brush, according to her, and it was irresponsible. The saddest part was that little boy told me before he left how fun it was we made paints ourselves and then got to use them. My 13-year-old had a sleepover, and I got a 4-page list of things one girl wasn't allowed to do or eat. When I asked her about it, she told me she was only allergic to hazelnuts, and everything on the list was there because her mom didn't want her getting fat. I let her eat with the girls. We had build-your-own nacho/quesadilla thing, and I took them to our bodega that's legitimately less than 250 feet away. It's the bottom level of an apartment building in our corner, and we're not even in the middle of the block, and got candy and soda to watch movies around 10 after they begged me to do so. And her mother informed my boss 2 days later her kid was no longer allowed to be friends with his daughter, and it was my fault. It was irresponsible for me to let our 4 girls leave the house after dark, with a chaperone or not. I also have a great one about my 4-year-old's team hockey mom threatening to call CPS on me so she could get my boss's attention, but that's less helicopter parenting and more pathetic. Next story. I'll give 2 examples, one suburban, one inner city. Suburban: Kid asked where dogs came from. Not sure why. I was an English teacher. I said they were bred from wolves and gave 2 common explanations for how human interaction may have started. Mom called the school, then called me, freaking out that I mentioned evolution. Turned into a whole thing. Inner city. Teen sucker punched some poor girl, then punched me in the face when I broke them up. Ended up getting escorted off campus by cop. Dad, who was obviously a crackhead, showed up to the school and started threatening to kick everyone's ass. Next story. Had a pretty typical red, yellow, and green behavior chart. One child was just transferred to me. Not a completely terrible kid, but had a habit of not knowing where the line was, so it got him in trouble from time to time. Every time I flipped his card to a yellow or red, would always let the parent know what happened and what we're going to do to stop the behavior in the future. She then goes off on how it's the other little kid causing the problems, and her child is perfect. I let her know that while there isn't a perfect person in this scenario, both kids could have acted in a different way. She then stated, and I'm not kidding, I know that the other kid is a dirty foster child. Still to this day, don't know how she learned this, and he assaulted my child. Foster child pushed back after getting hit by her child. She did this in front of the other child. I told her to meet me in the office, had a meeting with the director, and she was no longer allowed in my classroom. However, had to take down my behavior chart, which kinda blew because of how well it was working. Next story. I had a student who was failing pretty badly. He had a pretty bad attitude and was extremely disrespectful. When I called his father, the response was, "You're a woman, he doesn't need to respect you." I handed the phone to a male mentor or teacher, pretty dumbfounded, and explained the situation. The male teacher proceeded to ream the dad out and then had his kid transferred from my class to his class. The kid still failed and was still a disrespectful ass. Not sure what the dad had to say about that, but at least he couldn't blame it on me being a woman. Next story. I once took a babysitting job when I was 17 to earn some extra cash. The 9-year-old child wanted to play soccer inside. I told him many times not to do it and even took the ball away. He had another one and kicked the ball all around the house, completely ignoring me. He broke a lamp, some picture frames after knocking down a shelf, and a window. When the parents came home, they blamed me for the damages and thought I was screwing around in the house. Why? Because the kid said I was doing that. Never took another babysitting job after that. Edit. The breaking things part happens in a span of 1 minute, so there wasn't much I could do, especially since he would basically play keep away with me. Next story. Not a teacher or child caretaker, but I remember when I was in 8th grade, this little kid, about 3rd or 4th grade, was really weird and hung around us while we skateboarded. One day, he decided to come up after I fell and just hump me. I was obviously mad and told him to go away, and he didn't. Well, I fell another time, and he humped me again. I was livid. I told him if he doesn't go away, I'll tell his parents. Then he just walked up to me while I was sitting on the bench and humped me again. I told him I'm going to tell your parents, and he bolts inside his house, closing everything. All the guys I was with were fed up too, so I decided to go walk to his house and knock on his door. No one answered for about a minute. Then both his mom and dad was a cop, come out. I told them what he did. Well, his mom completely ignores what I say, and then explains, well, he said you punched him multiple times. Mind you, I did not punch this kid, but I did push him off twice when I fell, and pushed him away from me when I was on the bench. Not one of the times did he fall or stumble. I just gave him a simple push. She continues to berate me, saying I'm a child beater, and then the dad chimes in and says he should arrest me. Well, of course I start crying because I'm scared. I again reiterated that I never hit him, I simply pushed him because of his unacceptable behavior. Then they tell me how he has ADHD and was just acting out. I say, well, I was diagnosed with ADD a couple years ago, and it's never made me do anything like what he did. Then the dad screams, if you don't get off my lawn, I'm going to arrest you, and starts walking towards his cop car. All of us ran away as fast as we can, and I run home. Well, after a while, my dad gets home and I tell him all of this. So he calls his buddy, who the guy's superior, and tells him what happens. Apparently, the dad was going to get a promotion, but they just kept him as is. He got suspended from the police force for a couple weeks and got kicked off the neighborhood board members committee. They suspended him on unlawful use of power or something like that. He came up to my house and personally apologized, put his house up for sale, but took it off because it never sold. They're still there, and the kid is still as effed up today. Next story. One-on-one aid for a student in public school kid has Down, so he's a preteen, but obviously is at a lower level of schoolwork and has socialization issues. Unfortunately, kid also has hit puberty hard and has major anger issues, in addition to acting sexually frustrated a lot. He's tried to grab males and females in a sexual nature, has gotten violent with multiple students, and has physically grabbed me, female, on more than one occasion. When he's told no or that it's inappropriate to react that way, he either throws something or screams in your face. Oh, and he's tried to self-pleasure in multiple classes, which resulted in him having to leave one classroom because the other students, who were not special education students, were understandably uncomfortable with his actions. Mom insists he's not aware of his actions, that she's talked with him and he won't do it again. This is what she says after every incident. Without fail, it continues. The violence alone could get him suspended, as he's shown that he's cognitively aware of his actions and the consequences, but parents are high-profile persons in the community. Also, I've watched the kid grab his mom's breasts and hump her leg, and she just waves it away with, "Oh, he's just a little excited." You know, like one does with a dog. Next story. Late to the post, but I'm a high school counselor. Last year I had this student who was a total sweetheart but really needed intervention. This girl was a sophomore and had a grand total of 20 credits towards graduation under her belt. She should have had 90 by that point and was on track to fail 25 more that spring. She was failing miserably. Not only that, but she would constantly be ditching classes and often end up in my office because there was nowhere else to go. The school has only one way in or out. I did everything in my power to help this girl and eventually was able to get a parent meeting with myself, teachers, the school psych, and school administrators involved. I explained to her parents in great detail how, at this point, it was mathematically impossible for her to graduate from high school at that school at the rate she was failing classes. I offered continuation school that has a much higher rate of graduation for students in her situation. I desperately wanted her to get tested for special education because it was obvious she had deficiencies and could have at least gotten some legal accommodations put in place for her in order to help her. Parents just said no to everything. No to continuation school because that's where the bad kids went. No to testing because special ed had a bad stigma. No to after-school tutoring because she's capable of doing all this work. No to working one-on-one with school psych to sort out her emotional issues. No to everything. I'd never felt so defeated and knew then that I couldn't save every kid no matter how much I wanted to. Next story. A parent at my school worked for the district but in a different department. Her daughter was really average, not an A student, but not failing. There was no way this kid was a top performer in any way, but probably had a solid college career ahead of her. Well, that wasn't good enough for Mom, and she wanted the kid to be valedictorian or nothing else. So she read the entire handbook on school accommodations and learning disabilities and began petitioning. She managed to get her kid labeled as needing accommodations and then helicoptered the teacher to make sure they were being met. If the kid got lower than an A, she would find something that the teacher didn't do and bring it up with admin. It became such a problem that the teacher was receiving emails almost 2 times per day, and the admin was getting multiple calls per day. The teacher had to hire a lawyer and file a lawsuit for harassment with the union. The mom countersued, of course, and things got heated for a while. I remember the superintendent even getting involved. Every effing person in admin knew she was full of crap and making it up. No one could call her out because she was crazy, had money, and was ready to sue. They managed to somehow settle with her, basically waited out until summer. The only consequence she faced was related to emails. Apparently she was using her work email to harass the teacher. They started monitoring her computer use, and she was no longer allowed to communicate with the teacher in question. Next story. Teacher here. We had a student, 5th grade, who was pretty sneaky at first. He acted innocent, but he was far from it. I'll jump to the end. He stepped on someone when they were laying down during free reading time. He would constantly talk and prevent the class from getting to lunch and specials on time, and did this just to cause trouble. He hit someone with a meter stick. He would accidentally kick people. He stole stuff. He cursed. Mom came out and said we were singling him out and he would never do those things and told us to stop contacting her. Later, he did something else, something like ripping up classroom decorations or something like that, and the principal saw it. Principal called mom. Instead of accepting her child does wrong, she pulled him out of school. Since he hadn't been doing his work, this kid that was actually quite smart had all Fs as transfer grades. Next story. Not a child care worker, but one of my oldest friends suffered from this. It's been passed so many times around my parents' friend group it isn't even funny. His mom basically did all of his homework through high school. He was a very bright kid, but had no motivation as his mom did everything for him. Once he went to college and moved out, it was apparent that he didn't have the life skills to succeed on his own. His parents desperately wanted him to pass in college and tried so hard, but he eventually failed and dropped out. From what I gather now, he still lives at his parents' house and tries to hold jobs his mother gets for him, but can never get into work on time and always gets fired. I feel super sorry for the guy because he would have been a good dude in society if his parents didn't mess it all up. I think he might have some underlying signs of ADHD, but he was never tested. Next story. When I was 21, I was still living with my parents. Our neighbors were just the worst kind of parents. They let their kids bully other children and harass people's pets. One time, the kids were bullying the puppies of a stray dog that lived in our neighborhood, pulling their tails, twisting their ears, etc. Predictably and understandably, the mama dog growled and snapped at them. Some of the other neighbors tried to tell them that they shouldn't abuse animals. The kid's mom began yelling that a dangerous animal almost killed her babies. One day they came to our place for dinner. I couldn't stand this family, so I decided to eat in my room. Then, suddenly, I heard our puppy let out a painful yelp. Turns out the girl had kicked him. I ran downstairs immediately and picked him up while staring daggers at the kids. Their parents just smiled and said, "Oh, the kids were just playing with your pup." I lost my temper and yelled at them to get the F out. They left grumbling about how rude I was being. However, in just a few days, the mom asked my stepmom, who's a teacher, to tutor her kids. Free of cost, of course. Next story. I work in a kindy in China. We have about 35 kids in each class, seated in 4 rows of 8 with a split down the middle, facing the teacher. We move the children about once a month. Each child moves back 1 row, and the back row gets to sit in the front row. One parent came in and told us that her child must always be seated in the front row. There's nothing wrong with the child's eyesight. She's just too special to be seated anywhere but the front row, I guess. The parent did not request this. She ordered us. Another time in primary, the headmaster came to talk to me, aghast. We had one special group of children that was taught all in English for every subject. This was very expensive, and all the parents are pretty rich. One guy has 3 Porsches, a red, yellow, and blue one, and drives whatever color he feels like to school. He also has several Harley Davidsons. Anyway, this very rich mother was upset because the other rich kids don't want to play with her daughter. Her daughter, having servants at home, tried to order the other kids around, and you can imagine how popular that made her. This mother threatened to have the other children killed unless they started playing with her daughter. Okay, so this was a funny story until that last sentence. Threatening to have other children put to rest over something like this? Is this like a mob boss family or something like that? What is the situation? My goodness, horrible. Next story. I had a parent swear I was targeting their son and that he was failing my class because I was refusing to allow him his modifications. He was severely dysgraphic. That's a very serious accusation and can result in sanctions against your teaching license and federal lawsuits. To prove that I was following his plan and that he simply wasn't doing his work, I started sending him to the special education lab, which allows kids with modifications and accommodations to have a quiet place to work and a smaller teacher-to-student ratio. He immediately decides to cheat on his work, so his grades will go up, and it'll look like I was the problem, but the teachers in the lab caught it and documented it for me. The mom insisted that he just felt pressure to perform, which he may have, but it wasn't coming from me. The mom and I clashed the rest of the year. The next year, one of my students who had been in the class brought me a newspaper article where the kid had been arrested for drug possession and told me he was in rehab. Overall, the kid was a terribly behaved turd, but I still felt bad for him because he had to go home to his mom. Next story. I work as a camp counselor for church camps. One girl I had in my cabin was an absolute brat. She would sass me, call girls in the cabin idiots, and tell them she was better than them because she was in gifted classes, and she would punch some of the boy campers. She called my friend, who was a boys counselor, and ended up causing him to fall and bust his lip. When she was confronted about it, she just shrugged and said, "He's the one who fell. It's his fault." The final straw was when she got mad because I told her she couldn't go to the playground. We were literally eating lunch, like, sit down and eat? So she huffed and shoved my little sister into a chair, screaming, "Get out of my way, brat!" My sister only cries when she's mad. I looked over to her, completely shocked, and as soon as I saw tears welling up in her eyes, I knew it was go time. I grabbed her, took her to my friend, and as he tried to calm her down, I ran after this brat. I told her she had to apologize, and she straight up went, "My mom says I never have to apologize because people should be paying attention to me. When I get mad, I blow up, etc." Honestly, I didn't hear her. I was seeing red because who the hell did this 10-year-old think she was hurting my sister? I ended up letting her get back to the cabin. She's crying and screaming at my older girls in the cabin now, and I got the camp director. He yelled at her, made her apologize, and told me to call her mom. Called the mom, and this lady seriously went, "She didn't seem to do anything wrong. Maybe that little girl should grow some thicker skin." Excuse me? My sister is super thick-skinned. Your brat just pissed her off, because who wants to be pushed into a metal chair like that? Wow, sorry that's so long, LMAO. I've never been so mad at a kid before in my life. I hope this brat doesn't end up in my cabin again. Yeah, kid or not, it doesn't excuse this kind of behavior. You can't just say, well, she's just a kid. I mean, it's time for parents to check her, and if parents won't, some adult in her life needs to do it for the betterment of everybody. Next story. Not a teacher, but I used to nanny for a pretty affluent lady down the street during the summer holidays in high school. Took legitimate childcare classes before starting, multiple younger siblings of my own, leader of a local youth group, etc. I felt prepared, was getting the kid up and running in the morning, pick up after preschool, preparing lunch and dinner, crafts, planning activities up until bedtime, and putting the kid to sleep. The little girl was about 3. I had my own key to the house, and on most days I didn't see the mom until about 20 minutes after her child went to sleep. Kid was a brat. Temper tantrums over every single instance that didn't go exactly her way, screeching hissy fits and tears all day long. Kid would purposely drop cereal on the ground and refuse to pick it up because that's what the housekeeper is for. Personal cell phone, at 3, as a direct line so her dad could call her whenever he felt like it, randomly telling cashiers at the store that they were poor, endless demands for gifts and candy, never really had that food that wasn't takeout before we started cooking together, no discipline whatsoever. The kicker here, whenever the tears didn't immediately work, little girl would snottily announce, "If you don't do what I say, then I will feel ill," and then would make herself throw up on purpose through sheer power of will, and demand that you caught the puke with your hands. Her mom did exactly that. I didn't. Made it through 3 years of that before I went off to university, simply because the mom paid so incredibly well and because no one else was willing to go babysit there. In the end, the kid liked me a lot, mostly because I didn't put up with her crap and because I took her out for activities, outdoors, and walks with my dog when she actually behaved. Last I heard, the kid's grandma moved in with them so she could accompany their little Veruka Salt to school every day. Her mom still thinks that her kid is special and smart for being demanding. Next story. Kid never did any work in class, was caught trying to cheat numerous times, and overall was a disruption. I never like to just give a kid a 0, so I've given him numerous opportunities to make up work and redo the stuff he cheated on. Rarely took advantage of it and was missing a lot of work. One day I got an email from his mother asking why his grade was so low and as to why I was slacking off on putting his work into my gradebook. Overall, the email was probably 5 to 6 paragraphs long, berating me. I was a student teacher at the time, so I know nothing. The work she was referring to was stuff he had turned in about 2 hours before this email came to me. Everything got turned into our school website in this class, so it was all digital. Needless to say, I quickly figured out that the kid BS'd his work. Told his mom it was all my fault that his grade was so low because I wasn't doing my job, and overall, I should feel ashamed for putting him in that position. I sent her a nice reply pointing out the timestamps on the assignment, showing he'd only recently sent the stuff in and that I'd normally try to get everything in about 24 hours after it gets submitted, but that it may be a little longer when assignments are turned in late. Mother never replied back after realizing her son had lied to her about basically everything. Next story. Sometime in 2012, I distinctly remember it happening not long after Sandy Hook, a 4th grader I worked with was taking apart a highlighter at the sink and overflowing a cup. I asked him what his intention was, and he said, "I'm going to poison a girl I don't like with highlighter juice." I asked why he would do that, and he said, "I really, really hate her." I told my dunce of a supervisor about this, and she said, "Oh, he's just being dramatic," and blew me off. I told her if she did not escalate this, I'm going over her head, and she said, "Fine." When his mom came to pick him up, we explained what happened, and she looked at him like, "Oh my, did you really do this?" In a way like she's never heard him do anything close to this. This was not the first time we've had issues with this kid that involved telling his parents, but she just sounded so surprised this time. The next afternoon, I could hear the kid from across the room telling his friends under his breath how he hated me for reporting this. The kid frickin' openly admitted he wanted to poison someone, and the cup in the sink was full of yellow water. For the rest of the week, when he got picked up by mom, she asked him how his day went, and he gave her the puppy dog eye treatment as if plotting to injure someone didn't happen a few days earlier. She was so whipped. Parenting is awful these days, I swear. I'm no longer in the field. Next story. I emailed a parent to say their child was currently passing, but could technically fail the class if they did poorly on their final project and final exam. In the ensuing parent-teacher conference, I was told I was trying to fail the student and ruin his football scholarship. Edit. I forgot I had another student. Same situation, different year. The parents wanted the principal to be present for the conference, so instead, all of the administration, the student's counselor, and myself were present. The dad tried getting into a shouting match with my principal, and he left crying because the little girl might fail. Next story. When I was a student teacher, I had a student when he was in 7th grade, and he was an absolute horror. Far more than the regular obnoxiousness common with that age. I mean, this kid didn't give a F and acted like he was invincible. He was mean, rude, and didn't listen to anything anyone had to say. From what the other teachers told me, he lived with his grandmother, who was Native American, and anytime anyone at the school tried to talk to her about the issues they were having with him, she pulled out the race card and said that they were targeting her grandson because they were Native American, and not because her grandson was in fact a little a-hole. She threatened to sue, and the school stopped bothering to call her. He knew he could get away with anything, and there was nothing they could do. I'm curious whatever happened to him. I wouldn't be surprised if he was in jail. Next story. First year teaching, I got a kid with a reputation, not only with teachers, but with students too. Kid had paperwork diagnosing him with ODD, oppositional defiance disorder, but I didn't receive it till after my first class with them. In kid's paperwork, stipulations included, do not confront student in front of peers. Okay, maybe the kid has anxiety. Student may not have a fidget during class. This was for kids' ADHD. Okay, that's fine. Student's fidget is student's phone. Wait, what? In the first class, I quietly and very casually asked the kid to put their phone away because we were doing an activity in groups that required collaboration and kid was not participating. Kid was ridiculously defiant and wouldn't put the phone away. Friends told the kid to just give it up. I wasn't trying to confiscate it, literally just asked the kid to put it in their pocket during the activity. But the kid was stubborn as hell. Immediately got an email after class from mommy, CCing the case manager that I need to follow up the 504, which again I didn't receive yet. The next month was hell. Kid decided I was out to get him and was just a straight up a-hole. Multiple emails between me and mom. Tried to just clear the air with kid after class one day, and mom shot me an email saying I can't talk with the kid without an admin present. Kid's friends thought kid was being ridiculous because I was the new hip young Asian teacher. Kid would brag to other kids that they could do anything they wanted because they had a 504, and parents would just argue to get more leniency. They were gaming the system. Anytime I'd try to give mom a rundown of the day, as requested, she'd maintain that there was something in the 504 I'd missed. One specific incident, the kid kept talking while I was explaining a lab, so I just told the teacher wait, and friends tried to tell the kid to shut up. I was not supposed to verbally confront the kid during class, but honestly, what am I supposed to do? Stop class and text them? Kid got mad, left the classroom for a full hour without saying anything, and came back trying to get answers on the lab from friends. Emailed mom about the incident, and she said, my kid has a permanent pass to the Student Family Center. Kid can leave whenever they want to get fresh air. I tell her that kid never showed me a pass, they're pink and laminated, and I don't see that in the 504, attaching my current copy of the 504. Also, these passes are only supposed to be good for 15 minutes, and after that, the SFC has to collect the teacher if they're keeping the kid longer. The case manager sends out an email to all the kids' teachers that afternoon saying the permanent pass has been added to the 504, effective immediately. I told her it's not reasonable for the kid to be in this class if they can't follow instructions because we work with chemicals and other potentially dangerous equipment, and they could get hurt or hurt someone else. If this behavior continues, kid will need to sit out of all labs until they can handle the very basic rules of the class. Kid bombed open note quizzes, got caught cheating, and overall just would not follow directions. We were supposed to have a meeting with parents and admin, but it got canceled and the kid transferred out of my class. Good riddance. Before I get attacked, I know disorders manifest in different ways, and not all kids with the same or similar disorders express uniformly. However, I did have many other kids with the same disorder, ODD, who were perfectly manageable, absolutely sweet, and legitimately just needed to take a walk sometimes. They were responsible for themselves and always made up work they missed. This kid and their parents were just an absolute terror, and honestly, I think our school was scared of getting sued. Kid also had multiple suspensions for possession and fighting, and was still allowed to play sports, even with failing grades and terrible citizenship grades. TLDR, a-hole defiant student, parents filed paperwork to enable them, school admin completely useless, peace kid, have fun in college. Next story. Preschool teacher here. A 4-year-old would bully, tease, and punch and pull other kids' hair and curse up a storm. He was so challenging to the point where a lot of focus was on him, and the other kids were following his lead, and he took advantage of that, hard. Nothing we said helped him change for the 2 years we had him. We gave him so many consequences, and while we did reward good behavior, he rarely ever was good. Parents would completely baby him. They acted like he was innocent and his behavior was cute to them. They never took what we said seriously and think we exaggerate. He's going to kindergarten now, so good riddance. Next story. I taught middle school social studies, and we would watch Channel 1 News daily and write in our writing journals about what we saw and heard and stood out or was interesting. Then we would have a brief 5 to 10 minute discussion after and allow the kids to read or respond. This was in 2013 to 15, where there were a lot of stories about gay marriage at the Supreme Court, transgender bathroom laws, Syria, protests, etc. Well, I was mentioned several times on the school's unofficial Facebook page that I had a gay agenda and that I was trying to teach students about the gay lifestyle. 2 parents banded together and got other parents whose kids were not even in my class to confront the school board. They did an official investigation and I was told to stay home for a few days. It all amounted to nothing after they interviewed the kids and clarified the situation and even read some of the journals. I basically got 2 days off with pay, but I did not like the scrutiny in a SS class where teaching current events is important. Next story. Had a child who was inappropriately touching himself during my after-school program on a regular basis. Kept reminding him to do it privately in the bathroom because I know it's age-appropriate in kindergarten, and keeps doing it. Have a convo with mom and she says it's okay, he's just expressing himself sexually at 5 years old, and we should embrace that he touches himself and plays with himself all the time, and the other children could learn from it. I'm sorry, what? A child should not have one hand in their snack and the other hand down their pants while in the lunchroom with 19 other kindergarten students. Next story. I didn't answer a phone call from my parents in college, and they called security at 7 a.m. on a Saturday to knock on my dorm room to wake me up and call them. Talked to all of my high school teachers prior to the first day of school to get extra books so I didn't have to carry anything home. Wrote a handwritten letter to me asking me not to go to my BF's house during the week because the road was too dangerous. I was 23. Wrote my high school papers for me. Okay, the helicoptering is all fine and good, but like parents writing papers for you? I mean, low-key, I think 17-year-old me would totally be down with that. Next story. I quit teaching high-functioning special education when I taught my middle school kids how to dial 911 and work with an operator for assistance and got criticism from 5 out of 6 parents for traumatizing their children. The irony? One of the parents had choked about a year before and needed assistance, but my student was terrified, didn't know what to do, and ran away. The woman had passed out on the lawn and a neighbor responded. They had to send the police to help search for the student. It had frightened her that much. Next story. I work daily with kids in outdoor programs. I screamed at a kid who was about to run into the road while a car was coming. The only time I ever scream like that is when a child's life is in danger. The child proceeded to have a meltdown because, as I later found out, he never gets disciplined and his parents never hold boundaries with him. His mother was there and comforted him. She wasn't mad at me, but she was saying, "Forest Ninja is sorry she yelled at you." And I was like, "No, I'm not. I stopped him from getting hit by a car." I've gotten to know this child over 2 years, and he's so disruptive and is never held accountable. It's pretty scary because I work in nature education. I meet a lot of parents experimenting with alternative parenting, and most methods do more harm than good. Be in charge. You're the adult. Next story. Preschool teacher here, but one that comes to mind is this particular one. We told this mom for years her son needed to be seen by a doctor for his behavior, but she rug swept and denied and blamed. We went around in circles with her from the day he began at 2 years old until he went to kindergarten. Actually, we still do now, and he's in first grade and in our after-school program. These are actual quotes that flew out of mom's mouth as soon as we told her her son's behavior for that day. "Well, he had 2 servings of fruit last night with dinner," when she was told he had an awful day and could not keep his hands to himself nor listen to directions. This is my favorite excuse of all time. He had a play date on Saturday. Those always rile him up. When told about similar behavior on a Tuesday, "Well, he's been with his dad for 2 days. And now this one. Dad did not mess around." This child listened to and respected Dad much more than Mom because he disciplined him. He held him accountable. Mom's interpretation of this behavior was his dad's fault, not her son flying off the handle in her care because he knew he'd get away with it, unlike at Dad's. Well, when he's with that child, his behavior gets worse. No, it doesn't. Similarly, well, what did that child, any child, do to him when told about altercations with other children? You see the point. Nothing was her son's fault. Nothing. And he knew that. When she told me he had been diagnosed with ADHD, I wasn't nearly as surprised as she thought I would be. He's now in our after-school program, and our driver overheard his first-grade teacher, oh, thank God, when she saw that she, the van driver, was there to pick him up. Even his school teacher can't handle him in class, I've heard from the grapevine. He also had a younger sister who's been kicked out of another school, and was well on her way to being kicked out of ours when I left. For her behavior also, she's only 3. Examples include peeing on a teacher when she didn't get her way, hitting and kicking other staff, etc. She's her brother, except worse in some ways. I have more stories about more children, and this child, if there's interest. Next story. Not a teacher or anything, but back in middle school, I had a friend who had anger management issues, but we learned to adapt, and he's still a pretty cool kid. But one day he had an outburst, and he got super mad and started throwing wood chips at everyone and swearing like no tomorrow. This was the first time he acted out, so it was pretty big drama for a week or two, and during that, my best friend was totally pissed at him, so I suggested calling his parents and discussing with them. Apparently, the mom was saying stuff like, "Why would you just lie to our faces like this? And would you honestly believe they would do that?" We were both there when it happened, but the one that still makes my blood boil to this day was something along the lines of, "If you keep lying to adults, you're going to end up in prison." And I've never met so-and-so's mom before that, but I just immediately despised her afterwards. Me and my friends were separately called to the guidance counselor, and I learned that people have taken advantage of him, and he's been bullied a lot, and we all apologized, and so-and-so admitted he didn't want his mom involved, but she forced herself into the situation. Still hate his mom, though. Next story. I'm an ex-friend of the mother. When our children first started reception, age 4 to 5, she would hang outside, watching and wringing her hands. She would pick him up in a buggy, and she would force-feed him jam sandwiches as he's too tired to walk and was so hungry. This happened for 2 years, till they told her he shouldn't be in a buggy at 6, and due to the UK regulations, they also had to tell her her son was obese. It didn't go down well, as he's perfect. She's in and out of the school a lot, complaining about one thing and another, but she's neurotic. She's scared of water, so she wasn't allowed to learn to swim. She offered to go on school trips, and the one time she went, she sat next to her son and ignored all the other children. When they refused her going on future trips, she wouldn't let him go either. The school did little activity breaks away, 2 nights to start, and by the time they left to go to secondary school, it was 4 nights. Nope, never allowed to go. This kid was superior, and his mom had bigged him up to believe he was a genius. In the UK, they have grammar schools, which you have to pass an exam to go to, and we have 3 local grammar schools in a 10-mile radius that are brilliant. She was horrified when she got into the bottom of the 3. Obviously, they didn't grade his test properly, etc. Obviously not his fault. Now, I was the only person who'd call her out of the bullcrap, and funnily enough, she liked me. My son got into this school, so she desperately wanted my son to pal up with her son, as throughout junior school he'd been bullied, and my son doesn't like bullies and stood up for him. It didn't matter who was getting bullied, he just flat out hates it. He also passed his adult black belt in kickboxing at age 10. So this mother was desperate for our kids to be together. We go to the cinema quite a bit, and I offer to take him, and it turns out, at 10 years of age, that he'd never been to the cinema, and his mom all but had a panic attack as we went to see Spider-Man. Gratuitous violence, in her opinion. By the way, he's on his gaming station every evening playing Halo, and that was okay. He also lies about everything. Every time he lied, I called him on it. He hated it, but one time she was desperate for childcare, and I said I'd have him, but the condition was he couldn't go out in the clothes he likes to wear, tracksuit bottoms that were too small, stained and had holes in, with a hand-knitted jumper that was way too big. He looked a state, and I was taking them to an event about 20 miles away. She said that this is his favorite outfit, and he has loads of nice clothes but doesn't wear them. I explained that as a parent, she needs to tell him what's appropriate and what isn't at the age of 11. He should not rule the roost. Then I picked him up, clothes marginally better, and we went to said event. She had a panic attack as this kid had never been out of our country. Ever. He was a pain in the arse. I get why, as his mother is neurotic, and I told him if he lied one more time, I would drop him home. He also didn't know how to converse. You'd ask him a question, and he would never ask anything back as the world revolved around him. I asked him what his favorite film was, and he said a film I knew wasn't out yet, and also a 15 certificate. I called him on it, and then got him to admit that he hadn't actually seen it, but knew it would be his favorite. So the boys start school, and thankfully they're out in different classes. Now, this school is all boys from age 11 to approximately 17, and there's swearing, sexual references, etc., etc. Both her and my son are short, and in the dinner queue, the older boys started. My son laughed it off, but her child went running to the teacher, all upset. That night, she's ranting on Facebook about how bad the bullying is. Obviously, I say it isn't bullying, it's their first day, and it's almost hazing. The more he shows a reaction, the worse he'll be. Tell him to laugh it off, and they'll leave him alone. It doesn't help that she stands outside the main entrance to the school and grabs his hand across the road, as he can't be trusted to cross the road without her. The next day, one of the kids swore at him, and he's distraught, and he called him a mummy's boy, according to her post. She's messaging me asking if I'll complain with her. Nope, and that it's ridiculous. The school is doing nothing, and she's going to take it further, etc., etc. At the same time, this kid needed a tooth out, and it turns out he has a condition which is hereditary. Something to do with his jaw, so after 3 weeks in the school, she takes him out for the operation. He doesn't want to go back as he doesn't like the name calling, and mommy can't protect him, so he feigns that his mouth is hurting him a lot, etc. He's off for 3 months. The school sent a get well card back, and she put on Facebook that he's universally loved by all that meet him. Ugh. Anyway, it turns out they'd been sending him homework home throughout this time, and he wasn't doing it, and all of a sudden he had to go back to school, so he has a breakdown, and she takes him out of grammar school and puts him in the local comprehensive school, which is failing and has some really rough and badly behaved children in it. Apparently, his first day is hideous. If he thought the name-calling and swearing was bad at the grammar school, it was 100 times worse here, but he can't tell his mom. All the kids from his junior school are on Snapchat, and he hates this school. Hates it so badly because he has no friends, and his old friends from their junior school don't want to know him. Mommy still waits outside for him, now age 13. He's been physically bullied. I do not agree with this at all, but the school has this reputation. And on Facebook, she's crowing how much better this school is and has a nicer caliber of child, and the school listens when she goes in and takes her concerns seriously. My friend works there. They don't. They just humor her as they know she's a Fruit Loop. As for the son, he's still pushing boundaries, not doing homework, etc., because he's a genius and doesn't need to, because his mom tells him so. Oh, and he still hasn't been on a school trip as mommy wasn't allowed, and they can't be separated as she suffers from separation anxiety. Can't wait till he goes to college.